Hello, little people. My name is Colin Dossie. Your cup of tea history, whatever you want to call me. Today, I'm doing a little special episode that was inspired by my favorite genealogy YouTuber, Genie Vlogger. Woo! But to make it started, you read the title. You know what this video is about. You know that there's something going on here. You know that there's a lot going on. So you're probably saying, "Oh, Colin, what are you about to create?" Well, let me tell you. Today I'm doing a video on my 8 great-grandparents. For disclaimers, my paternal biological grandfather's parents are not going to be included. They will instead be from the man that my grandmother married. So, on that note, let's get started with my paternal grandfather's parents, Wilfred Marshall Dossie and Polly Emma Patricia Moore Dossie. My great-grandfather, Wilfred Marshall Dossie, was born on July 1st, 1933 in New York, New Jersey. He was the son of Wilfred Laurer, also known as Jack, and Eva, not sure about this, but Ellen Gowan Dossie. He grew up in Philadelphia after moving there from the age of 4, and he went to Frankfort High School from 1947 to 1951. Marsh also attended Pennsylvania State University, which he graduated from in 1955. At PSU, he was the president of the Delta Upsilon Fraternity and active in the Skull and Bone Society. When he met my great-grandmother Polly while at PSU. They got married on December 9th, 1957, at Christ Church. Upon graduation from the PSU, Marsh was commissioned as an officer of the USAF, serving 3 years of active duty. Now, something special about Marsh was that upon graduating high school, he decided that he didn't want to be called Wilfred anymore. So instead, he went by either Esquire Marshall Dossie or W. Marshall Dossie. As you can see on this birthday card, he gave to me a year after I was born. He attended Dixon Law School, graduating in 1961 after passing the bar and completing his clerkship with William Davis, Esquire. Then he began the practice of the law with Romaine Culver and John Griffin at the Culver and Griffin. And in 1970, him and partner John J. Griffin, he founded the Griffin and Dossie Incorporating in 1982 with John Ray DePaula and himself, now GDDJ. He had a very active law career. Early on, he was a solicitor for Toronto Borough, Wallsburg Borough, and many townships in that area. He served 1 term as the district attorney of Bradford County and 9 years as a Bradford County solicitor. Marsh also tried cases in all countries across the northern tier of PA, from the Countersport to Milford to south to Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, and Williamsport. He also tried cases in all courts of the U.S. Court for Middle District of Pennsylvania. On numerous occasions, he argued with cases on appeal before the Supreme Court PA, the Superior Court of PA, and the Commonwealth Court of PA were always active in the community. He served on numerous boards and committees, including the United Way for over 30 years and trustee of the Guthrie Clinic for over 30 years. He was a Melvin Jones Fellow and life member of the Lions Club, member of the Board of Directors, and the past vice president of the Towanda Area School District Foundation, and past president for the Board of Trustees for the Towanda Republic Library. Marshall was also a member of the Christ Episcopal Church, and he served as vestry there and was senior warden for many years. He was active in the Diskany in Bethlehem and was on many committees and served on the Escalade Court. Marsh enjoyed family and friends, of course, skiing and golf. One of my only memories of Marsh was him on a scooter. He would have been somewhere in his 80s at the time, actually. He was a member of the Pond Hill Yacht Club, and he served his sunfish in races at Wake Losberg, earning titles including being the oldest member to have won a race. At the time, he was 79 in 2012, never mind. And turtles for tipping over the most in a season. He was an avid Penn State and sports fan. when he held season tickets for the Penn State football games for over 50 years. He attended every game he could, and if he could not attend, he graciously gave all of his tickets away so that others might share the joy of the game and the Penn State experience. When he married his wife, Polly Emma Patricia Moore, he had 4 kids. My grandfather, Dana, Christina, and Craig, who is currently the Towanda basketball coach of Towanda Area High School. Now, as for his wife, Polly Emma Patricia Moore was born, it is debated, on February 18th, 1933, in Waverly, Tioga County, New York. Her baptism records say that she was actually born in 1934, which makes you question a little bit, doesn't it? But she was born to John J. Moore II and Julia Casandana Page Moore. She was great with the kids. She always loved to party. But when she grew up in Towanda and graduated from Towanda Area High School in 1951, she attended Penn State University and graduated in 1955. At Penn State, she was president of the Delta Gamma sorority and the treasurer of the motor board. She was active in the players. Like I mentioned before, at Penn State, she met her husband. Polly was also active in community affairs. She was the member of the Wednesday Club and served on the board of directors of Martha Lloyd School for more than 20 years. She even had a brother who was an art director for many notable movies like The Pursuit of Happiness, Sophie's Choice, and Ghostbusters. She was active in Waste Law King Association and served as president of the board of directors as a commodore of the Pond Hill Yacht Club, like her husband. She loved Waste King, its beauty and the community. She worked to preserve the land, water, and wildlife in and around the lake for many years of her life. She was an avid épure skier and had accomplished seamstress, having made cheerleading uniforms, dance theater costumes, and elegant church altar frontal and vestments and prom dresses, in addition to repairing many football uniforms. She was an excellent knitter and knit many sweaters and blankets for newborn children at the hospitals. She enjoyed playing bridge with her friends, and she was also remembered for being a great loving wife, mother, and grandmom and grandaunt, and her friend, and a fan of all Black Knight sporting events. Polly also had a wonderful, engaging wit and enjoyed writing letters to the editor, which got right to the point to be made. Polly passed away on January 13th, 2011, predeceasing Marsh by 9 years when he passed away on August 18th, 2020 at the ages of 87 and 76. I had no memories of Polly because she died before I was born, but my father Todd says that she was just awesome. He says, well, this was her house right here. You would have liked her. Marsh's funeral happened to be the first funeral that I ever went to. I was 7 years old. I didn't see the viewing though. But the casket, I was right in front of the casket. I left flowers on the casket. I attended the funeral with my cousins and my pregnant aunt at the time. One of our in-laws even passed out on the grass, and my 7-year-old mind was so stupid that I blurted out, is she dead too? So yeah, that was my mind as a 7-year-old at my great-grandfather's funeral. That is always what I'll remember him by. Now we're going to switch over to my other set of paternal grandparents, Leroy Ivor Oley and Gloria Bernadette Krzyzewski Oley. My great-grandfather, born Leroy Ivor Oley on December 13th, 1935, to Stephen William Oley Sr. and Hilda Jane Nelson Oley. My great-grandfather's early life was not the best, especially because his father immediately walked out on his mother, given that he apparently did not want too many kids. Then his father walked off, married a woman named Clara Yuskavage, and had 3 other kids with her, which my great-grandfather thankfully never acknowledged, and he never spoke of his own father again. But more family knowledge that has surfaced recently says that his father used to take him on the weekends and such, but I haven't heard much after that. He had 1 sister and 2 older brothers. Ellsworth Otto, Stephen William Oley Jr., and Alberta, who is 96 and still alive. My great-grandfather was raised in Plains, where he was a lifelong resident. When he graduated of Plains Memorial High School in 1954, he immediately became deployed in the U.S. Air Force during the Korean conflict. My great-grandfather also worked for Carter Footwear, making flip-flops, sandals, and shoes. He was also a devoted cab driver to his wife, me, one of his great-grandchildren, and his grandchildren. You would usually find him, apparently, at the dance studio with his wife, or at Walmart, or waiting in school parking lots. On September 3rd, 1960, he married his wife, Gloria Bernadette Kraszewski, and they had one daughter, Brenda Lee. According to my great-grandmother, who is still living right now, Leroy, at the start of their marriage, was a drunk who liked to crash cars. But when he started getting into DUI accidents, he decided that he was going to quit drinking, but he later became a chain smoker. When my grandmother gave birth to my father in 1979, he ended up being the fatherly figure for my father. He raised my father up until the age of about 13 to 14, along with his wife. Now, what are my memories of Leroy? I just have one. Just one. We used to take walks down the neighborhood. Back then, I had a big obsession with cars. And I do remember one such incident where he was walking me down the road and I was trying to go a bit too far. And he had been so nice to me. He had given me so many toys. He used to come over to the house a lot and I'd be excited for him to come over. I never asked him for much. I was only 4 when he died. But I remember one time I was told that I once asked him just for some cardboard, and he just came with a cardboard box, and I loved it. And yeah, that's one of my only memories of Leroy, is him scolding me when I tried to go a bit too far on my leash. And I felt so small, and I didn't want to be downgraded by him. It wasn't a good feeling at all. One of my last memories of Leroy was him lying in the usual room with his in his rocking chair, but instead it was replaced with a hospital bed. And he would sit there while I would trail my toy fire truck all over the house, and he'd just watch, and he would feel sad, I assume. He became bedridden after he was diagnosed with lung cancer. Like I said earlier, he was a chain smoker. But when he was finally taken to hospital, he knew he didn't have much time left. And on the day that he passed away, he was so thin, and he felt like he didn't want to speak. But he was able to express his wants through phrases and hand movements. Now, when he knew that it was going to be his last day on Earth, I was talking to my great-grandmother on the porch, and she described in horrific detail on how he once looked over at her on the day that he passed away, and he knew that he wasn't going to, have much longer to live that day. And looking at him, he looked so sad while he was looking at her. In the middle of the afternoon on October 6, 2016, my great-grandmother called my mother and told her to come up because she wanted my mother to be there, even though my father was at work at the moment. And my mother came up to, I believe it was the Administration Medical Center in Wilkes-Barre. And as soon as my mother got there, he had passed away just seconds earlier. When they were luring his hospital bed out of the room, she was by my great-grandmother's side as they wheeled him out. He was buried in the Chapel Lawn Burial Park in the same cemetery as his brother and his wife Arlene. Now, on to my only living great-grandparent. Gloria Bernadette Kraszewski was born on September 21st, 1939 at 29 Bank Street in Plains, Pennsylvania. She was born in the same room that she sleeps in. Her early life was not easy, as she was born only 20 days after World War II started. And on August 6, 1944, her brother Bernard was killed after being run over by a tank in the service. Her brother was brought back to the U.S. in 1948, And according to one of her stories, they took him into the spare room and they tried to open the casket containing apparently his remains using drills. There were apparently 1,000 screws that were welding it shut. When they got a little bit of it open, they could smell the foul stench coming from it. And his heartbroken mother did not want to have to look at her son in that state. When she was 6 years old, at the end of World War II, a brother Stephen would be born, and then in 1950 she'd have her last-born brother, Ronald. She often cared for Ronald as their father was absent because he was a drunk. When I last visited her on June 5th, 2024, I got more story in detail from her saying that her father used to abuse her mother, and there was one significant incident where they had to call the police because he just would not stop wailing. My great-grandmother Gloria was not very close with her family growing up, and here's why. Her father, at some time in either 1923 or 1924, had a daughter with a woman either named Violet or May, and from then on, his family moved to the the south side, and they changed all their names to either from Kraszewski to Craig or Crake. So that's why my great-grandmother did not have a very good relationship with her family growing up. Unlike many women at the time, she was able to graduate from high school, where in 1957 she graduated from Plains Area Memorial High School. She didn't go to college. She was a hairdresser shortly afterwards, and on September 3rd, 1960, she married my great-grandfather. When they had their one daughter, they found trouble raising her because their father was also out all the time, but it was only when her husband stopped drinking is when they finally settled and found a source of comfort in that type of thing. I just completely messed up my words. I don't actually know that. Yes, her husband was a drunk at the time, but he did quit drinking, and that's why he was able to help raise my grandmother. My great-grandmother decided not to have any more kids because at age 26 she started menopause. After her father died in 1961, I didn't mention this earlier, but her husband became more of a father figure to Stephen and Ronald. They often even called him Dad sometimes. My great-grandmother's mother was her best friend. They would go everywhere together. She'd always be over at the house, and they'd always be talking, and her mother was her backbone. My grandmother often shares stories while we sat on the porch together, and she would always tell me, "I'm not afraid to die. It's just a cycle that everybody goes through. You shouldn't be afraid to die either, because then you can carry on with your life experiences, and you can show everybody how you lived, and they can hopefully pass that on to their children and grandchildren." When my great-grandmother dies, I will say that I will always have remembered her for her quotes and how lightly she handled the topic of death. I will never forget that about her. She currently lives at the age of 86 years old. She has 5 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. Myself was the firstborn great-grandchild. Yeah, I forgot to mention her parents were Leon Michael Kraszewski Sr. and Frances Edna Lulis Kraszewski. Now on to my maternal grandfather's parents, Joseph Thomas Long and Teresa Dora Moliski Long. Joseph Thomas Carl Long was born on January 17, 1927 in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. He attended Coughlin High School, Wilkes-Barre, graduating in 1945. His father was a well-known contractor and painter, and he even earned himself the glorious nickname, the Man with Golden Hands. He was one of 10, like I mentioned before, but like most parents back then, his father was always the one out at work. He would be the one to drop in occasionally to offer treats and be adored. Joseph lived in a time where whenever you did not get a chore done correctly or you misbehaved, you would be beaten by the belt. And that's exactly how he grew up. His father died in 1941 after a heart attack of some sort that... Hold on, let me look it up. Okay, we don't actually know. It just says unknown illness. How gay is that? of an unknown illness during the Great Depression. His father also notably poured drinks during Prohibition in 1919. He first enlisted for the Army in 1944, where he claimed to have born on January 17, 1926. He was deployed in the Army, but was soon later found out and sent back to the United States, but not after given a harsh beating by his commander, General. He was an Army veteran of World War II when he served with the 88th Infantry Division as a tech sergeant from 1945 to 1946 when he came back to the Army. He was employed as a foreman of quality control by RCA in Mountaintop, retiring in 1982. He was also employed for the Pioneer and Steltic factories in Wilkes-Barre. He was a member of St. Leo's Church in Ashley and its Holy Name Society. He was vice president of the St. Conrad's Young Men's Society and commander of the Catholic War Veterans Post at the 264th Ashley. He married Teresa Dora Maliski on July 8, 1950, and they had 2 children, Joseph and Henry. One common story I was once told by my grandfather, which would be his son, was this. My grandfather would get paid to do chores around the house. Of course, back in those days, they would actually used to be money. My grandfather was a very skinny kid. Something about that day was that when he got done working for a couple of hours, his father only handed him a quarter. And my grandfather said, "A quarter? You're telling me I hustled and bustled all day and all you're giving me is a damn quarter?" Well, now you're not getting anything at all. No. So yeah, let's just say he was a spiteful person. He died on February 27th, 1999, at the age of 72 years from a brain morality that I can't My great-grandmother Teresa was born in the Linwood section of Pennsylvania on August 1st, 1930, to Edward John and Dora Kaliski-Maliski. This entry is going to be short, given that I don't know anything about her. She was also an attendant of St. Leo's Church. Blah, 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 blah. Oh yeah, her and my grandfather used to get into a lot of arguments. She died on January 10th, 2007 of ovary cancer. Now on to my other set of maternal great-grandparents, Jonas Robert Roper and Mabel Louise Bond Roper. Jonas Robert Roper was born on October 31st, 1931 in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. He was the son of George Edward Roper Sr. and Ethel May Fritzinger Roper. He grew up on Lincoln Street, where he lived with his 8 siblings. When he was 18 in 1950, he immediately joined the service where he was a part of the Korean conflict. On September 11th, 1950, he and his brothers, Leo and John, were on a train together. Jonas was a cook in the Army. The train crashed in Ohio, and both Leo and Jonas escaped the crash with minor injuries, but they started searching around for John. When they heard a wailing cry, they dug under a couple pieces of, luggage, and that's where they found John with serious head ulcerations and many more injuries. But all the 3 brothers survived the ordeal. John was sent home because he lied about his age. On August 18th, 1950, he married Mabel Louise Bond Roper, the daughter of Charles Henry Bond and Catherine Helen Monahan Bond. When he was on the train crash, he was a part of the U.S. Army, a member of the 109th Artillery for over 20 years. He retired in 1979 as a foreman for the Bellerick Machine Shop, Swearsville, previously working for the Canard Corps, Kingston, for about 18 years. He and his wife had 3 kids together, and they adopted a 4th on October 11th, 1970, and his name was Jeremy. He and his wife and family were members of the 44th United Methodist Church. According to my grandmother, he and his big family would have many reunions, all with dozens of trays of food. Jonas Robert Roper was a funny man. When he visited my grandmother in South Carolina, when she got married to my grandfather, they had a bit of fun to watch when my great-grandfather saw a fly, just, flying nearby, and he swatted it perfectly with his hand, and he said, "Boy, even the flies are slow in the South." Because everyone drives slow in South Carolina, there's almost no crime. It's all apparently perfect. On July 10th, 1985, my great-grandfather was taken to, the Veterans Administration Hospital in Wilkes-Barre. And he was having, a couple problems, like heart problems. He'd even had a heart transplant at 47. Not heart transplant, open heart surgery. But on Tuesday, July 16th, 1985, he died that night after his heart gave out. Mabel Louise Bond Roper was born on March 15th, 1932, to Charles Henry Bond and Catherine Helen Monahan Bond. Her early life was completely misfortunate, with her having to run a bookstore while her father became sick early on. Her mother was out cheating on her father, but they stayed together. She used to keep watch over her sister and brother. She would be the one to cook dinner for them, and she would be their babysitter, be their caregiver, be their parent, sort of. Claire, of course, would be the one to be the wild card to sneak out to drink and smoke. When she had her 4 children in 1952, 54, 56, and 70, she was the caregiving parent for all of them. She would always forgive and forget for everything that happened. But starting in 1980, she ran Mabel's daycare. From 1980 to 1995, she ran the daycare and made many, many good life experiences, which was very fortunate for her because she was a very, very good person. She dazzled in design and fashion, always carrying around a gold, rose, or silver purse. She was soft-spoken, friendly, and big. Our family used to call her Weeble because Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. No matter what would happen, you were supposed to eat what was on your plate. That was her motto. That was actually their motto when they got married. Like who cares, man? My great-grandmother, Mabel Louise Bond Roper, passed away on April 18th, 2012 at Timber Ridge Nursing Home. Edwardsville, I think? She died after a 3-year battle with, unfortunately, dementia. Alzheimer's is a disease that causes the brain to shrink and brain cells to die. Almost always progresses into dementia, which is a very severe and aggressive form of the disease. Her sister Claire is 87 right now, and she still lives on, having outlived just 2 children, but also very involved in her family life. But she is also starting to experience the same kind of symptoms. But keep Claire in your prayers. Keep my great-grandparents in your prayers. Keep my living great-grandmother in your prayers. And hopefully we can move on from this. And hopefully this was better content, because I spent forever trying to make the script for this video, okay? Good night. Sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite.